the most powerful tool of empowerment of anybody is equally applicable to the rich as well as the poor.
Yes, why equity in education is considered the most important question for the educators.
The growing disparity is a disturbing thing, whereas for me as an educator, this perhaps, when I wrote my first book, English book, I have written several books, but my first English book, which was published in the US, only about 30% of the countries are now in the SDG goals track.
Okay.
The successful student in education today, he gets extra coaching, good schools and extra coaching, a lot of good extra coaching, and they pass the exam. Then we, in education, we give a certificate stamping that you are successful. We do the same thing for the poor person who has no resources, who got the weakest school, perhaps even weakest teachers, and fail the exams, and we now stamp on his paper, you have failed.
But when it comes to this formal education, I think this is where we lacked. I think this is where we kind of took a lot of time to create formal education system around it.
Informal education is still the most powerful education. Informal, now the formal education is struggling today.
And you also talked about the training requirement for the educators. You know, I was born and raised in India, and I moved here in Canada, and I saw a big difference when it comes to, educators being trained here. My elder daughter goes to a preschool. She's 2.5 years, and I have seen that all those teachers, all those educators are properly licensed. They have to have certain hours of education to be dedicated to keep that license alive and active throughout the year. Even if you have the license, you have qualified as a teacher, but in order to keep that active, you still have to keep doing all those things. I think there in Western countries, I have seen that they're also trying to inculcate that alongside the formal education now. I've seen that my kids, they don't really do a lot of book reading. They don't really do a lot of homework stuff, but they get other activities like a homework to be done by the teachers. Which is so. What is your thought on that? Why Westerns who learned this from us are able to do it better?
It's not that the Western world is more research oriented. You see, in our part of the world, we do research for master's degree or PhD just to get the degree. But no hard thinking on education. How we can change education for the betterment of everybody. When it comes to developed countries, particularly Canada, US, Australia, Japan has also failed to do that. I personally with you.
Welcome to our podcast. Today, we have the privilege of hosting an extraordinary individual whose contributions to education have garnered global recognition. With a wealth of experience spanning continents to disciplines, our guest journey is nothing short of remarkable. He stands as a beacon of inspiration, recently honored as the Inspiring Educator of the Year 2024 at the prestigious EdTalk World Congress. A distinguished Fulbright scholar and holder of a PhD in psychometry from the University of Iowa. He has served in diverse roles from redefining education policies as the former State Secretary of Education Reforms to shaping minds as a university don in Sri Lanka. His impact surpasses borders, having lent his expertise to esteemed institutions such as the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Bank, where he managed groundbreaking projects such as for Asia, Africa, Europe, and the USA. His prolific career is highlighted by a commitment to excellence, reflected in his authorship of over 150 referenced publications and three seminal books. So today, we delve into the insights and wisdom of a true luminary in the field of education. Please join me welcoming Dr. Upali Sedere. Hello, Dr. Sedre. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Vinay, for the nice introduction. I'm very well, no problem. Very busy as usual. Ready to discussion. Uh, and I'm
Oh,
very glad to be on EdTalk because I always say globally there is no one forum where people can articulate things, and I'm very happy to see that EdTalk has been the new electronic media, that where people can share things. I believe that EdTalk will expand further for the good of educationists in the world, because
mhm.
there's a lot to share and very little is shared. Thank you.
Pleasure is all ours, sir. And it's just a small effort in the right direction that we are trying to put and contribute as much as we can, being an organization that really, that really is known for bringing people together, talking about the solutions, how we can create a community and work in the right direction, which is because we believe that it's the art of inclusivity which is required in today's time to solve some of the biggest problems in the world. So, once again, warm welcome to EdTalk podcast, where we talk to education industry leaders like yourself on how to make this world a great place for education. So, to start with, just in few words, what our audience can expect from this podcast today.
Actually, I think I'm going to touch base mostly on important topic, the issue of equity. Why I take equity as the most important thing? Because education is the most powerful tool of empowerment of anybody. It is equally applicable to the rich as well as the poor. But unfortunately, equity has become just a word of talking at various forums, but nothing much has gained. Of course, a lot of things have happened. I'm not saying that nothing has happened, but I would like actually for the policymakers, the top policymakers and service providers, those who are in the industry, to realize the reality of equity in the practical world, because we all are the privileged, and it is us who should really think of the spectrum of the issue, because right now the education is going very well for the rich,
Yeah.
and it is going very well in the developed countries,
Mhm.
but not for the poor, not for the marginalized people, and not for the developing or low income countries, because they are struggling with it. But the world is really becoming a place for everybody, though we talk of education beyond borders, and the whole world is becoming a village and all that. These are good words to say, but you see, education has to be there. If that global village to work right, education is the tool. And that is why I believe that everyone will take a message from my discussion, how best we could go for that, and realize at least the key issues in the world today. Particularly, I will be addressing more on the disparities, the the global digital divide, which matters today very much for education. So this will bring some uh, thoughts in the other minds, listeners' minds. That's my all expectation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I could not agree more with you. I think that what we're trying to do right now, and if I talk about globally, the journey is the destination. If you really want to make everyone achieve that kind of an education, it will not be someday or sometime it is going to happen. It has to happen today. We have to act now. And with this, you have actually set the tone absolutely right for this podcast. So I'm very excited and looking forward to it. Uh, I can ask this first question, I think, where you talked about equity. So I think let's start with this. Why equity in education is considered the most important question for the educators to address by the global community?
You see, not only the human beings, any being in the world has to have basic learning to survive. The
True.
not only humans, but
Yeah.
whereas human beings are concerned, we are as the top species in the whole thing, and we have a major role to play, because the diversity in the world is so vast. It's the beauty of the world, in fact. You have the way that we have the valleys and the mountains and all the physical diversity. The human diversity is also adds to the color of the world. But unfortunately, that diversity has not been treated that way. We all are one species, human beings. But the disparities are growing day and day. Every day, disparities are on the increase. As a result, education is the most important thing in life, particularly when education became formal education, particularly in the 1900s onwards, particularly after the First World War, the Second World War, the education started spreading all over. But until the First World War, people never realized that literacy matters, because only at First World War, when people were trying to recruit soldiers to the army, they found 95% of the world is illiterate. And that is the time, including the West, the developed countries. That's the time, they developed intelligence tests, verbal intelligence tests to assess whether people are intelligent and enroll them into the army and deploy them in the war. And that's the time the world realized that literacy is a very important component to have. Even to send a message, nobody could read that message. So they had to, they really struggled with it. So by Second World War, education started spreading. Today, of course, formal education has become a mandatory requirement for everybody. That is where the disparity also started. When it was not formal education, when it was informal education, learning from the generations, learning from the elders, learning by doing, all those things, there was no big disparity. In those local communities, people picked up the skills that they wanted to survive. They learned the language their own way, and the world had less discrimination. Of course, people operated in isolation. Today, we are talking about a global village. Everything distance has disappeared, and cultures have met each other either directly or indirectly. So the mobility has become a very great issue, and everyone knows what is happening around, and the media has added more color to it. But
Mhm.
yet, the disparities are on the ground. The growing disparity is a disturbing thing, whereas for me as an educator, this perhaps, when I wrote my first book, English book, I have written several books, but my first English book, which was published in the US, Globalization and Low Income Economies, Reforming Education, the crisis of vision, I call it, because
Mhm.
the vision was the problem. Because
Yeah.
at that time, we realized that, the illiteracy is a major issue, which the world community realized in 1990. You all know that we had the Jomtien Conference in 1990 in Thailand, World Conference,
Mhm.
where global community, led by the UN, World Bank, and all other development partners came together and addressed the issue of education. That is where Education for All Conference, we call it EFA conference, that took place in 1990. Uh, Actually, I come on board with that, with the World Bank, because the World Conference identified 9 most populous illiterate nations.
Okay.
One was India,
Mhm.
China.
Mhm.
China was the largest, second largest was India.
Okay.
Similarly, Nigeria, Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the 9 most illiterate nations, 5 of them were in Asia.
Mm.
And so the world community invested a lot. Development partners got mobilized to address the issue of illiteracy, not because of anything, because the the world leaders knew the world cannot move any further if people are illiterate.
Yeah.
So the thankful to UN and the development partners who initiate this World Conference, EFA conference. And since 1990, world made a very good progress on providing literacy. If you take India, I mean, I know Mr. Vinny, you're an Indian by origin. Now you
Yeah.
live in Canada.
Yeah.
The India was one of the most illiterate nations in 1990. The school enrollment was as low as in 60% of the 40% of the children never went to school.
Yeah. That's
And
true.
those who went to school, perhaps only 1 year, 2 years, they dropped out from school.
Yeah.
Bangladesh, I got the responsibility in Bangladesh. I went as the project monitor for general education. I joined the World Bank, and I was living in Bangladesh in the resident mission, where actually enrollment was again around 55-60% range,
Okay.
and dropout rate by 2 years, nearly 30% dropout from the
Hmm.
schools. You
Okay.
see, that was a lot of and UNICEF, and as well as other development partners with the government develop plans to educate people. So
Hmm.
the because education was realized the most important thing to empower people. What do you mean by empower? That is another important question to ask.
Yeah.
Because nowadays, if you are not literate, no resources come to you.
Mm.
The education is the gateway to resources.
That's true.
It opens the world for you.
Yeah.
You cannot open up a bank account, or you cannot even obtain any facility for development if you don't have the basic education.
Yeah.
Not only that, actually, at that point of time, the world realized many people didn't have a national ID card, identity. So identity is a basic thing for education. That is why I wrote my second book on uh, security-based approach to development, where I actually talk very much on identity issue. Because
Okay.
if there is no identity, there is no entry to resources for anybody in the world. So the poor have to be empowered. They have to have a national identity. Many people were there in the world without an identity card or a nationality. So
Hmm.
these issues are globally addressed. The empowerment is actually education becomes the most important thing, because that gives you a wider uh, uh, wider I mean the wider world open for you,
Hmm.
because you become eligible, because you can
Yeah.
read and you can communicate, and you become a person of worth. That is why,
That's
at least primary education, at the Jomtien conference it was agreed that universal primary education has to be given. That was the target.
true. Mm.
And they set that target by year 2000, year 1995, to increase school enrollment to at least 90%. You see, there was very good progress,
Mm.
particularly in those massively illiterate populous countries like China, India, Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Colombia, all those countries.
Mm.
They had plans and they achieved. Very good achievement was there.
Mm.
By year 2000, these targets were reviewed again, and the world community set the Millennium Development Goals at that time.
Okay.
So, they, why I'm saying these things, even Millennium Development Goals at that time, people realize education alone is not the issue.
Hmm.
Poverty is the greatest issue.
Yeah.
Because unless you address poverty, education alone cannot go. So,
Yeah.
health, education are very important dimensions in this empowerment
Mm.
thing. Somebody's health has to be good, education has to be good. That is actually the human development. This It is one coin with
Hmm.
two sides. One side is the health, the other side is the education.
Yeah.
Then, if that is good, poverty can be tackled.
Mm.
So the world community worked on health, education, and poverty from Millennium Development Goals. Gradually gone there. Today we are talking of Sustainable Development Goals.
Mm.
Even the number one is again eradication of poverty.
Yeah.
The so the but what is important is you cannot eradicate poverty unless you educate people,
Yeah.
unless you make them healthy. So the health and education still is the cross-cutting issue for any development issue in the world. That is known to all of us. It is known to all development partners, and they invested a lot. But unfortunate thing happened with COVID
Mm-hmm.
pandemic.
Yeah.
From 2019, the Sustainable Development Goals journey has had a major barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the targets achieved at that time by the time of COVID
Mm-hmm.
is all in many countries, it has gone reverse again.
Mm.
The poverty has increased. Now, if
Yeah.
you take my country, poverty level was came down to 4% before.
Mm. COVID.
It
Mm-hmm.
was one of the lowest in Asia, but today it is gone up again to 12%.
Mm.
Because that has happened in India, that has happened everywhere.
Yeah. It was unprecedented. It was like similar impact for the whole world. Yeah.
Including developed countries. It
Yeah.
became
Yeah. Even the Western countries. That's right. Yeah.
so. The now the out of the countries, only about 30% of the countries are now in the SDG goals track.
Okay.
They-
Okay. Mm-hmm.
All other countries are struggling with it,
Mm.
and particularly about another 37% of the countries are lagging behind. Actually, they cannot even get back to the track.
Mm.
Now, for instance, if you take Sri Lanka, my own country here, that was for Sri Lanka, as you know, we had the reputation as the very high literacy, very high level of education, uh, which actually allowed us to face COVID more successfully.
Mm.
Perhaps Sri Lanka had the least amount of deaths, but at the end of it, we were a bankrupt country because now we are struggling with economy.
Yeah.
When we are struggling with economy, naturally, education is affected.
Yeah.
Now our schools are still struggling to recover from COVID pandemic, the
Mm.
damage done. So
Mm.
similarly, all countries have this problem. So that is what I say. Unless you bring education to people, you cannot make them stronger individuals, particularly in the 21st century, because without the basic literacy skills, numeracy skills, not only that, today, technology skills.
Yeah.
If a person cannot operate your mobile phone, if a person cannot write anything electronically, today you are a lost person.
Yeah.
So not the older generation, for the younger generation, particularly, this is a very, very serious issue. So the education has all these things around. Formal school has become the center of imparting all these skills. So unless our schools are stronger and strengthened, we cannot bring empowerment to people. But unfortunately, world is the disparity among schools is so high. Now, if you I talk about the disparity, I think you will perhaps ask me, why are you talking about disparity? Now, if you take India, for instance, 25% of the Indian schools are either one teacher or zero teacher schools, even
Mm.
today, though India has invested so much of money and has taken so much of effort by the Indian government to provide formal education to everybody,
Mm.
access has been given, schools are built, and children come to school. But many schools work with volunteer teachers even today.
Yeah.
So these are the key issues that I would like the world community to understand.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for throwing that light on it. And I think for me, you said so many things, but I think one thing that I never knew, and I'm sure a lot of us never knew this, that this encouragement that people should get education actually came from a war. We did not know that when they wanted soldiers to come and probably get into the war, they realized that they have to be educated first. What an irony. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. And I think let's continue where we just left. As per you, sir, what are the key equity issues to address today? I mean, in century 2021, what are those key issues that needs to be addressed when it comes to equity issues?
Actually, I was in my last statement that I said it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you take, for instance, when you talk of education, formal education, what we want is school enrollment. Number one, they should
Mm-hmm.
come to school.
Yeah.
Now, if you take the sustainable development goals, one of the things is that, even before coming to school, preschool education or
Yeah.
is identified as a very important thing, because research show early exposure to formal education
Yeah.
strengthens their, they really empowers them and they make them able to achieve more. But when you look at the world, the preschool education now, I must say that it has got its value because of the world community has realized its importance. Even the poor parent has realized its importance.
Yeah.
So the all governments have worked for it. But somehow, disparity in preschool education is huge. Now, if you take, when we say a preschool, a child is attending preschool, there are various types of preschools that you have in the world. Very affluent community has very comfortable preschools for their children with all trained teachers, all good equipment. But on the other hand, if you go to Africa, particularly Sub-Sahara, I have worked in Africa a lot. You can see, can we call them a preschool, because they are so much poverty in that school. Teachers are not trained. There is no material for them to learn. There is no the purpose is not really understood. But in a way, it's good because they meet together to socialize and exchange at least their own level. Some
Mm-hmm.
effort has been made, but there is so much of disparity in preschool education. Now, if you take in Sri Lanka, we have 19,000 preschools in Sri Lanka, which is quite good. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
very good access to preschool education. But on the other hand, uh, 50% of the teachers have never had any training, and they cannot be called. Now, of course, the government has already passed legislature and also to standardize schools and all those things. But you can have paper. It doesn't mean that the schools are running well,
Yeah.
because you see the same story in India. I have seen on paper it looks very good. You have a national policy, new national educational framework, 2020, which was presented, and it's very good. All interventions and intentions are good, but the real doing part is not there.
Mm.
The If you take schools today, disparity, I can tell you in India itself, you don't mind my giving examples from India, for instance, or Nepal.
Absolutely.
They,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, for instance, in India, if you take a grade 8 child, there's still 22% to 30% at the rate of reading is at the grade 2 level. These are
Mm.
all your Indian studies I'm talking about.
Okay.
The After 5 years of primary education, a child still cannot read grade 2 material.
Mm.
Same in numeracy or mathematics. These are
Mm.
basic skills now for life. So this is the situation not only in India and Sri Lanka. I mean, in Sri Lanka also it is the same. Little better
Mm.
Sri Lanka, because somehow we are a small nation. When it is small, also it's easy to handle. India is a
Mm-hmm.
huge nation. China has the same problem. But
Yeah.
even in Sri Lanka, primary education is completed and children get into secondary education. About 18 to 20% of those children are not really has not achieved the primary level competencies. So
Mm.
the disparity in schools education is very high. Why
Mm.
it is important? Because today it is the formal learning is what is needed. You see, Mr. Vinay, the bad thing is school also has become, I always say this, education today in a way perpetuates poverty.
Okay. Yeah.
Perpetuates poverty in the sense, say the successful student in education today, he gets extra coaching, good schools and extra coaching, a lot of good extra coaching, and
Yeah.
they pass the exam.
Yeah.
Then we, in education, we give a certificate stamping that you are successful.
Mm.
We do the same thing for the poor person who has no resources, who got the weakest school, perhaps even weakest teachers,
Mm.
and fail the exams. And we now stand on his paper, you have failed. So
Yeah.
that is what I say, for the modern world, for the 21st century, it is actually our system, examination system, perpetuates poverty,
Mm.
because that seal for lifetime keeps him a failure in the system. Because wherever he goes, if somebody asks, he has no certificate, he can show only that I have failed.
Mm.
So that is not education. So these are things that, the equity issues that we have to. Examinations really is a bottleneck for development. So
Yeah.
this is the situation in most of the countries. Today, largest in inequity, actually 575 million children
Mm-hmm.
are in learning poverty according to UN studies, UNESCO studies.
Mm.
84 million children are still out of school.
Mm.
Average schooling age, if you
Mm.
take in India, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
for the first class, average schooling age is still near zero.
Mm.
Whereas for the upper middle class and the rich, it is 9 years.
Okay.
You see, the disparity is so
Yeah.
vast.
So
So
vast. Yeah.
that
The gap is
this
so
is
big. Yeah.
gap so big,
Yeah.
and how we can overcome this situation is a huge issue.
Mm-hmm.
There are of course the same story in Nepal, for instance. If you take Bangladesh, Pakistan perhaps is even worse, because Pakistan still has uh, many other issues to
Mm-hmm.
address. Some children still not allowed to go to school.
Mm.
Same story in Afghanistan and other places. South Asia is not doing that well. But we are little better than African, Sub-Sahara, and other places, because
True.
whatever said and done, we have a long tradition in education in South Asia. Uh,
Yeah.
for long years, we had our own systems of education before
Mm.
the Western people introduced education. Still, Asia was, in a way, very rich in language.
Mm.
And so that culture helps South Asia. But
Yeah.
the time is different in 21st century. Disparity has to be addressed. Disparity is vast.
Actually, I was coming to this. When we look at the history of Southeast Asia or South Asia, we see our ancestors have been great educators. They have, done a lot of research and developments, even in the past. But when it comes to this formal education, I think this is where we lacked. I think this is where we kind of took a lot of time to create formal education system around it. And the informal education was probably good in some parts, but it was not really giving that, blanket coverage to the huge community and the bigger population.
You're very right. I think India is the best example I
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
quote, because you see the informal education is still the most powerful education.
Hmm.
Informal, now the formal education is struggling today, and our advocacy is actually to go for more informal ways of
Okay.
offering education in formal school, because
Okay.
formal school has become too formal. That
Yeah.
is the problem for the poor. The most of the
Absolutely.
poor
Yeah.
children fail because of the formalities.
Mm.
They are not failures in informal education.
True.
You see, the what is important is, I call it actually, informal education is more humanized. It is more natural,
Yeah.
uh, because that is the way that actually it's more authentic actually, because the people learn skills from the father, from the work, from the street, and all other places, and they had a lot of life skills.
Yeah.
They survived. Not that they failed in their life. They survived quite well. The formal education with the certification issue and examinations, we endorse more failures in the poor, among the poor people. What is
Good.
important
So would it be wrong to say, sir, that maybe it was a good a way of having informal education in the roots of South Asia or Southeast Asia, and actually the formal education was probably again a template copy paste that we were trying to do from Western countries, that this is the way we should be carrying out the education, and we were trying to really push the formal education on probably something which was already going good. I mean, I'm not sure, I'm not an expert, but just a question.
No, it was not going good
Mm-hmm.
in a way, because
Okay.
you see, now if you take India, your social caste system
Mm-hmm.
was so was always people learn skills only from their caste,
That's right.
from what was exposed to them.
Yeah.
Today we are talking about equity means all people are equal.
Yeah.
If concept to materialize, it may
Mm-hmm.
take another 100 years to do that, but
That's true.
still, the formal education brought some kind of equity in that.
Yeah.
Everyone got the opportunity to learn wider range of skills.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that formal education has failed to give it to all in
Mm-hmm.
an informal way. The skills come from informal learning. When
Yeah.
you teacher teaching you academic material, you never become skilled. You
Yeah.
may have knowledge, but
Mm.
what is important in today's world is not the knowledge. Knowledge has to be translated to skills for gainful employment
True.
for whatever the field that you need. So
Got
the
it.
formal education in a way today has failed because it has given more cognitive training, knowledge
Mm.
oriented training, and that I'm not saying it is not important, but never translated those things to skills.
Yeah.
Now in 21st century, everybody is talking about skills, technical skills, life skills, and people have to be skillful to survive.
Yeah.
So the informal way is the only way that you can impart skills.
Yeah.
See, yes, the nature of skills is fine. You can, without knowledge, you can learn a skill. Take a
Oh
bicycle.
yes.
You can
Yeah.
ride a bicycle without knowing what it is.
Yeah.
You can still.
How it works, what without understanding the science of it. Yeah.
The skills are like that. That is
Yeah.
how the non-formal or the informal education was very successful. Without much deeper knowledge, people could learn skills. Take how to cultivate. Uh, you go to the rice field and cultivate it, and you harvested very good rice.
Yeah.
But maybe through experience only they gain knowledge. Now,
True.
actually, education, formal education, today we are talking about authentic education.
Mm-hmm.
Authentic learning means actually to give them more skills oriented learning.
Mm-hmm.
So you give basic knowledge, let them do it, then
Mm-hmm.
gain further deepen the knowledge by doing.
Mm.
Formal education has failed in a way. It is too academic, more examination oriented, and it has not created the type of people that the world wanted. So these are
True.
issues. Actually, today, if we want to take equity issue more successfully to the poor people, informal education has to be strengthened more and more in the schools
Mm-hmm.
and get their skills out.
Yeah.
And they are much more cleverer than you and I when it
That's
comes to
true.
skills. You
That's
and I
true.
can talk.
Yeah.
You and I can write and talk, but they are the doers. The doers are the people who has informal education, who
That's
can
true.
get to the field and work, go to the garage and work, go to any industry and work. But the world is more and more wanting people to do things. So doers are mostly in that lower bracket of socioeconomic package,
Yeah.
but unfortunately their doors are not open, and we
Mm.
have not found a way for certifying their skills
Yeah.
and making education more authentic journey to industry. That is where the gap in so I would say old education that you said that we had, traditional education was very much limited
Mm-hmm.
to affluent class,
Yeah.
and it had its socio class distinction very much,
That's true.
and therefore it had its own shortcomings. But
Absolutely.
today, what we are talking about, a wider range of education for everybody in equal terms, and most important thing is that we should bring the skills dimension from informal learning to
Mm-hmm.
formal learning. a merger of formal learning with informal learning is the need of the hour in the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You also talked about the training requirement for the educators. What I have seen, because I was born and raised in India, and I moved here in Canada, and I saw a big difference when it comes to educators being trained here. Every educator, even if you talk about preschool education, my elder daughter goes to a preschool. She's 2.5 years. And I have seen that all those teachers, all those educators are properly licensed. They have to have certain hours of education to be dedicated to keep that license alive and active throughout the year, so that a regular education, regular training also needs to be put in. Even if you have the license, you have qualified as a teacher, but in order to keep that active, you still have to keep doing all those things. And everything that new comes in is first trained or probably educated to the educator so that they can then start working. And I also second your thought that this informal education, I think there in Western countries, I've seen that they're also trying to inculcate that alongside the formal education now. I've seen that my kids, they don't really do a lot of book reading, they don't really do a lot of homework stuff, but they get other activities like a homework to be done by the teachers, which is where they're actually gaining a lot of skills, not just reading the books and understanding the formulas out there. So what is your thought on that? Why Westerns who learned this from us are able to do it better?
It's not that the Western world is more research oriented. You see,
Hmm.
in our part of the world, yeah, we do research for master's degree or PhD just to get the degree,
Yeah.
but no hard thinking on education. The how we can change education for the betterment of everybody.
Hmm.
Now, when it comes to developed countries, particularly the Canada, US, Australia, uh, Japan has also failed to do that. I
Yeah.
personally believe
Yeah.
because they are also the pressure is very much. But you see, the latest research, particularly in U.S., Wisconsin, the Wisconsin state did a lot of work in early 2000
Hmm.
on methods of teaching.
Okay.
The problem is not in education. Actually, the way teachers handle material, the knowledge has to be converted to skills. Then you have to get students to grasp up basic knowledge and put them into some active learning.
Hmm.
Today, what India or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh, you have spent a lot of money in your governments, our government, but our classrooms are very passive, just
True.
just learning and taking
Yeah.
notes.
Yeah.
That is the difference. Now if you go to Canadian schools, as you what which you have seen, same, I have my grandchildren in American schools, and I see them go, they don't have homework. Even if they have homework, it is mostly doing things.
Yes.
They are doing a project, they are collecting information and analyzing those information. It's all active learning.
Yeah.
Our countries, we still on rote memory. Our children are in Sri Lanka or exam cramming for examination.
Yeah.
So that is the difference. So what is
Hmm.
important here is informal learning is more active learning.
Yeah.
That active learning component has to come into our formal schools. Our
Yeah.
curriculum, still subject matter is important, but subject matter has to be converted and put into active learning material for
Hmm.
children, enable children to do various kinds of things. They do
Yeah.
project work, they do case studies, they do field visits, they do market surveys, various types of things,
Yeah.
and learn skills. That adds another dimension. So Vinay, today our children in education are just inside the whole school time,
Yeah.
and
That's true.
so their socialization is very much limited.
Mm.
The America did the American Labor Secretary commissioned a report called SCANS report, which is available, came out in 1994-95,
Hmm.
and SCANS report actually made a major change in education. He
Mm.
said my appeal to the teachers and schools is to look outside the school wall
Mm,
and see the also the industries. He said, industry, you open your industries for the children to come and learn.
mm,
That is where the formal education has a gap.
yeah,
We are not exposing them to the industry
yeah,
sufficiently.
yeah,
We are not
that's right.
interacting with society. As a
Mm,
result, the social skills, interpersonal skills, job-oriented attitudes
yeah,
are very poor in our part of the world.
that's right.
They, they, that is where the developed world is way ahead of us now, today.
Yeah,
Because they have gone there. They are
yeah,
at least trying their best to go there.
that's right.
And in our part of the world, still our politicians and the policymakers think having a school building,
Mm-hmm.
giving some chairs and desks, and giving some books and appointing a teacher, you have given education.
Yeah,
That's a wrong perception of what. This is where even the educated politician doesn't have the perspective that what you and I are discussing right now. That has become the problem in South Asia or developing nations. We
mm-hmm.
are of course short of money. We don't have the spending,
Yeah,
but even the amount of money that we spend, we can still use it for more authentic learning in schools
true.
because it is less costly. It's less costly. You don't have to give books actually. You
Mm,
need
mhm.
you allow the child to explore.
Yeah,
That facility is not there. But of course, one other dimension. Now, if you take the Canadian school, you go to the primary, your daughter is there. They all have a computer or two in the classroom,
mm.
and children are exposed to technology from very early
Age. Yeah,
age.
yeah, yeah.
Now, India had I'm sure you are familiar with that,
Mm,
hole in the wall experiment in India,
mm.
done by one of your Indian professors who is not here. I think he's working in UK, but he did that one, Mr. Uh, I'm sorry, Amit.
Okay.
His the, he has done some groundbreaking work, but
Mm-hmm.
still, most of your Indian schools still don't have a computer in school,
Yeah,
and grade one child or grade two now, even high school child has no access to computers. Some do. Those who have, they have computers at home, they have
mm,
tab at home, they have
yeah,
laptops at carry and smartphones in their pockets, and school also have got computer lab. That is the disparity today. But if
yeah,
you go to the poor person's village, those children don't have even one computer in the school. They
yeah,
have no smartphones. They don't have internet or computer at their homes. So this disparity is really makes it more difficult for children to learn the kind of things that the Canadian or the American child learns
yeah,
today. Our children are far way behind. These are the equity issues that the world has to be concerned of.
yeah. Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much for your insights on those, and thank you for answering those couple of questions that I just asked. Uh, I want to talk about globalization and internationalization a little bit. Do you think it has helped in addressing equity concerns in higher education specifically?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes for some.
Uh-huh.
Yes for the affluent people.
Okay.
It has certainly opened up the world for the
Mm-hmm.
affluent class. You
Mm-hmm.
see, the foreign degrees are available. Any child can go to a foreign university for education, and
Yeah.
foreign degrees are offered in different forms, sometimes online, and
Mm-hmm.
they have established local partnerships under franchise. And
Yeah.
our children, even in South Asia or Africa, they are getting foreign education through that. So,
Mm-hmm.
from that perspective, yes, there is education has gone beyond borders in higher education, but again, I say only for the affluent class of people.
Yeah.
You have to have the money, you have to have the technology with you. Unless you have the internet and the computer, access to computer, high powered internet, and the
Mm-hmm.
money to pay your tuition fees and all those things,
Yeah.
it has
Again,
opened up.
things are coming back to the same thing that, the
And
privileged and non-privileged, the gap between
exactly.
them is actually getting broadened up. even after so
But
many efforts.
I'd like to make one point. The
Hmm.
state universities
Hmm.
or the state schools should have a different function to do. They are
Yeah.
not doing that. You see,
Okay.
there is no equity even spending of state funds. You see,
Hmm.
I think in a democratic country, in a welfare state, their number one responsibility should be for the poor. I'm not saying the rich should be neglected. They
Hmm.
have the means to get what they want.
Yeah.
They can always go to private sector and learn. They can do it. But the government should give their top concentration to the poor people's education and provide them this the kind of thing that we are discussing.
Makes
They,
sense.
they, this is where the biggest gap is.
Okay. No, absolutely. So I would like to jump on to the last question of the session today now. And this talks about the global community. Do you think that the global community, particularly South Asia, will be able to reach sustainable development goals set for 2023 to have quality education for everyone?
Uh, can I share something here?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Oh, yeah, I can see that now.
Now, here I want to show you this particular slide.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is actually on the SDG goals I have taken from 2023 SDG report. You can see from the UN statistics.
Okay.
Now, here is the actually school completion rate by level of education, the
Mm-hmm.
latest report by the UN on SDG. Now, you can see here
Mm-hmm.
uh, Central Asia and South Asia.
Yeah.
You have the red triangles are primary education. See,
Okay.
when it comes to primary education, for instance, Asia and most of the countries are have given access to about 80% of the children complete go into primary education. But you
Okay.
can see, but in sub-Sahara, it is still around 60%. So
Mm.
these are global disparities. But
Mm-hmm.
whereas developed countries, if you take to Australia, New Zealand, and Europe and Northern America, it's all near 100%. Okay,
Yeah.
it's all 100% actually. We all know that's completion rate is around 100%. Now, even in South Asia, if you take Sri Lanka, perhaps it's around 97%, 98% range. The but now you take the secondary education, lower secondary education means grade 6, 7, 8, 9
Mm.
uh, in red dot. Again, now Central Asia, South Asia is around 80%.
Yeah.
But you know, though it is said 80%, now if you take in India, some of the states are way behind this one.
That's
It is
right.
only some states have come there. In general, it's there. But if you take the situation in Europe and Northern America, that is also nearly 100%.
Yeah.
So these are the big disparities and SDG goals that you know. This is one of the goals that we want to achieve. Now,
Mm.
if you go into preschool education,
Mm.
here you can see and a preschool how it looks. One preschool is like that,
Mm-hmm.
but see the other high quality preschools how
Yeah.
they are. So these are the disparities that we talk.
Yeah.
Now, when you take to enrollment globally,
Mm-hmm.
organized learning 1 year before, that is primary means preschool.
Mm-hmm.
Sub-Sahara only 48% of the children go to preschools.
Okay.
Africa it is around less than 50%, mostly around 50%.
Mm.
But in Central South Asia, we are happy that you know whatever the condition of the preschool, 85% of the children now know the value of preschool education.
Yeah.
But whereas in America and others, they are in 90% range. So
Mm.
in general, world is around 74%. So 25% of the children do not go to any school.
Yeah.
So the about 2.6 billion people,
Okay.
that is from the 8 billion population, still lack access to internet. There is
Mm.
no internet for 32% of the people
Mm.
don't have any access to it.
Yeah.
According to UNICEF, 1.3 billion children between the age of 3 and 7 do not have access to internet at
Yeah.
home or school. So this digital divide is becoming the biggest problem because
True.
21st century and ahead, literacy as much as the language and numeracy, internet and media becomes a essential skill for everybody to survive, because now whole world is going digital. So
Yeah.
the one section of the population get marginalized if they don't get the digital skills. These
Mm.
achievement figures are very important for us to realize. You may ask, how can we do any better?
Yeah.
That is the biggest question.
That's
My my answer may be not very good. Now, if you
right.
take India, top 1% of your population in
Mm.
income brackets, top
Yeah.
1% of the Indian population, their income levels, total income of the 1% is 4 times the bottom 70% income.
Yeah.
Bottom 70% of your population,
Yeah.
whatever the incomes, 4 times of that is enjoyed by 1% of your top population, 1% of the top of the population.
Yeah.
If I put it in another way, you have 9 billionaires in India today. Their incomes are
Mm.
higher than the bottom 50% of your population. No,
Yeah.
not bottom 50% or 70%. It's 930 million people. Total income is in the hands of those 9 people. I'm
Mm.
not saying that. What I'm showing is the disparity. But my point is that they have a social responsibility.
Yeah.
I think we all have, you have, I have social responsibility to educate the poor.
True.
Unless we do that,
Mm.
the disparity becomes too big.
Yeah.
There will be more social unrest in the future. That is the danger. Because
Yeah.
they are all human beings with the same ambitions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So unless you and I are more concerned about their welfare and how to give the basic skills to them,
Mm.
I think the world will not be a very happy place very long. That's my fear. Because education is a discrimination today. Education discriminates people today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even state funding is not spent in equal proportions.
That's right.
The different class of people get more state funds,
Yeah.
and the marginalized poor people get a very small amount from the government funds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these are the major concerns that I would like you to address actually, that SDG goals cannot be achieved unless education and health goals are achieved.
Yeah.
Poverty cannot be eradicated if people remain illiterate and incompetent to operate in the modern world. So SDG goals have to be realized. Even protection of environment and all other larger 17 goals
Hmm.
all rest on education. If education is good, people can be more sensitized to environment
Yeah.
and to use of resources, protecting the world, and all these things will happen. What is important is that giving right education and the skills for all the people in the world, disregard whether they are rich or poor.
That's right.
At least primary education successfully to all citizens.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think the number that we should have on that chart for all the countries globally should be 100% for the formal education or for the basic education for everyone. With that, we come to the end of this very insightful session on the global sphere, on the global sphere of the education and how the states and governments are supposed to work and what steps that they can take. For our viewers, if you have any questions for Dr. Saab, you can just put it in the comment section, and we can probably have him answer to those questions from Dr. Upali. For you, sir, thank you so much again for your time. We would definitely come back to you once again if we have more questions from our audience, and we will seek your help and your advice to answer those questions. Till now, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This is Vinay signing off.
Thank you, Mr. Vinay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure talking to you. You have your great rest of your day. Enjoy your evening, and we shall talk soon. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.